My family threw me a celebration, but I was the joke. Everyone came to watch. The banner called me the family's biggest disappointment, and everyone laughed along. I smiled, walked out without a scene, and shared one secret that had the entire family turning on each other within weeks. I'm 27, and until recently, I thought I understood the concept of family love. Turns out I just hadn't seen what it looks like when love turns into mockery dressed up as support. My name's Ryan, and I'm the punchline of my family's favorite joke. Or at least I was until the night everything changed. I grew up in a loud, opinionated family where sarcasm was basically a love language. Sunday dinners were less about bonding and more about surviving the next roast session. My mom and dad weren't cruel exactly, but they had this way of turning every insecurity into a family anecdote. If I failed a test, it became the story of Ryan's legendary D in physics. If I dated someone who dumped me, it was that time Ryan scared off another one. You get the idea. The laughter always came at my expense, and I was expected to laugh too because that's what family does, right? We don't take things so seriously. By the time I graduated with a psychology degree, I was already used to being the sensitive one. My dad, a contractor who built houses with his hands, always said my soft degree wouldn't build me a future. My mom would chime in with something like, well, maybe you can psychoanalyze the customers when you're waiting tables. My older brother Luke joined in too. He worked in finance and never missed a chance to flex his paycheck. Meanwhile, my younger sister Emma was the golden child studying medicine, volunteering, somehow perfect at everything. So when I got invited to what my parents called a graduation party, I actually felt hopeful. They'd said they wanted to celebrate me finally finishing college. My dad even told me to wear something nice. For once, I thought maybe, just maybe, they were proud of me. When I walked into the backyard that night, though, the first thing I saw stopped me cold. There was a giant white banner hanging between two trees with bold red letters that read, "Our family's biggest disappointment with a degree in psychology." At first, I thought it was a prank. You know, a quick laugh before the real surprise banner came out, but then everyone started clapping and laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. My uncle, my mom's brother, actually wiped a tear from his eye. He was laughing so hard. "Oh, this is perfect," he said, slapping my dad's back. "You really nailed it, Mike." I stood there frozen, holding a small gift I'd brought for my mom, a framed photo of us from when I was a kid. My stomach twisted so hard it felt like my body was trying to reject the moment. My dad shouted, "Come on, Ree, don't look so serious. It's a joke. Lighten up, Dr. Freud." Laughter rippled again. My aunt yelled, "Maybe he can analyze why he's always so moody." Someone else shouted, "Careful, he might start charging by the hour." I wanted to disappear. Every smile in that yard looked like a blade. I caught my reflection in the sliding glass door. My polite smile looked so fake it hurt. Every instinct screamed to leave, but I didn't want to give them the satisfaction, so I laughed loud. Maybe too loud. I nodded and said, "Good one." I even joked back, "Well, at least I can help all of you figure out why you need to laugh at me to feel better about your lives." That earned me another round of laughter, but it wasn't laughter with me. It was at me again like always. Dinner wasn't much better. My mom had gone all out of face-style setup balloons, even a cake shaped like a brain. The inscription said, "For the man who knows nothing about real work, but everything about feelings." My uncle Mark kept calling me Dr. Disappointment. My brother Luke joked about sponsoring me since I'd never afford my own place on a psychologist's salary. It was humiliating. Every minute felt like a performance, and I was playing the fool. But the worst part was realizing that literally no one saw anything wrong with it. My mom smiled at me proudly, like she'd done something good. My dad kept telling guests, "We just love to tease each other." Emma, my sister, just gave me a sympathetic smile from across the table, like she pitied me but wouldn't dare intervene. When the night started to wind down, I quietly excused myself and went inside. I needed air, silence, anything. I sat in the hallway for a moment, trying to slow my breathing. Then I overheard my Uncle Mark near the kitchen saying, "Honestly, Mike, you should have gone with my idea, Ryan. Proof that participation trophies don't work." Everyone laughed again, even my mom. That's when something inside me broke. Not in an angry outburst kind of way, but in a cold, surgical one. I realized I'd spent my entire life giving this family my vulnerability like it was a gift. And they kept turning it into a weapon. They mocked what they didn't understand, and I'd been their favorite target for years. But that night, something changed. I decided I wasn't going to let it slide this time. I walked back out to the patio where most of the family was still lingering, laughing, half drunk and loud. My dad looked at me and said, "You're not leaving already, are you?" I smiled and said, "Nah, just wanted to say bye to Uncle Mark before I go." I found him leaning against the fence talking with two of my cousins. He raised his beer when he saw me. "Hey, Dr. Disappointment. You good, kid?" "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Hey, Uncle Mark, how's Aunt Laura doing these days?" His grin faltered for a split second. "She's fine," he said a little too quickly. "Really?" I tilted my head slightly. "That's good. She didn't look too fine last week when she was leaving your neighbor's house in tears." Silence. His cousin's smiles vanished. Mark's eyes darted to them, then back to me. "What are you talking about?" he said, voice tightening. I shrugged. "Maybe I'm mistaken." "Probably nothing. You know me reading too much into things." I gave him a pat on the shoulder and added, "But I'm sure the rest of the family would love to hear about it. You know how fast word spreads." And with that, I left. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I could already feel the shift in the air, the tension, the confusion, the whisper that would turn into wildfire. That one sentence was all it would take to unravel the perfect family image they were so proud of. I didn't plan on coming back, but as it turns out, I didn't have to, because within 2 weeks, everything started to fall apart. And it all began with that one comment at the party. The thing about families like mine is that chaos doesn't erupt all at once. It leaks through the cracks slowly, quietly, until one day everything collapses under the weight of all the fake smiles. After the party, I tried to move on. I told myself I'd just focus on my life and let them be who they were. But something strange started happening within days. My phone buzzed constantly. Missed calls, group chats, sudden invitations from relatives who'd ignored me for years. It didn't take long to realize what had started it all. My Uncle Mark. Apparently, my little comment had spread faster than I expected. I didn't even say much, just enough to plant doubt, and that was all it took. Mark's wife, Aunt Laura, called my mom in tears. 2 days later, my mom, being the queen of gossip, told my dad, who told Luke, who told Emma, who told her best friend. You get the idea. By the time the story came full circle, half the family was talking about Mark's affair, and the other half was debating whether I'd made it up. When I showed up at my parents' house the next weekend, I could feel the tension before I even stepped through the door. My mom was in the kitchen, whispering furiously on the phone. As soon as she saw me, she hung up and said, "Ryan, what did you say to Mark?" "Hi to you too," I said, kicking off my shoes. "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "He's been calling everyone saying you're spreading rumors about him and Laura." I leaned against the counter. I didn't spread anything. I said something to him, not about him. If it's turning into gossip, maybe that's not my fault. She crossed her arms. "Ryan, you can't do things like that. You know how sensitive Mark is." That made me laugh loudly. Sensitive mom. He literally called me Dr. Disappointment in front of 20 people. He's sensitive. She sighed, rubbing her temples. "That was a joke, Ryan." "We all joke, right?" I said. "You joke, I get humiliated." Same pattern, just different nights. "Dean," that was when my dad walked in. "What's going on here? Your son is stirring up family drama," Mom said, clearly trying to recruit him to her side. Dad looked at me like I was some kind of problem he had to fix. "Ryan, what's wrong with you lately? You've always been so touchy, but this is ridiculous." Something about that word touchy set me off. "I'm not touchy," I said, trying to stay calm. "I'm just tired of pretending it's fine when everyone treats me like a joke. That banner, the comments, all of it, it wasn't funny," he scoffed. "It was harmless." Everyone laughed. "Yeah," I said quietly, "except me." He sighed like he was talking to a child. "You really need to grow thicker skin. The world doesn't care about your feelings." I smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that reaches your eyes. "Yeah, I've learned that, especially from you." For a moment, the room went silent. My mom looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't. My dad grabbed his keys and muttered, "I'm not doing this today," before storming out. That was the conversation that cemented what I already knew. I wasn't part of this family anymore. I was an outsider they tolerated out of obligation. Over the next week, I started noticing the favoritism more clearly than ever. It was always there, but now it was like a spotlight had been turned on. My brother Luke came over to my parents' house one night while I was there, and they practically rolled out a red carpet for him. Dad poured him a beer, Mom cooked his favorite meal, and they spent the evening bragging about his latest promotion. When Luke talked about buying a new BMW, Dad nearly burst with pride. "That's my boy," he said, clapping Luke on the back. Meanwhile, when I mentioned that I'd landed a paid internship at a counseling center, my mom smiled politely and said, "That's nice, dear. Maybe it'll help you find a real job eventually." Luke smirked. "You mean an adult job I wanted to fire back, but I didn't. I just said, 'You're right,' and excused myself to go outside. Sitting alone on the porch, I thought about every moment that had led up to this. Every family dinner, every joke, every time I'd let it slide because I wanted to keep the peace. That night, I realized peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from boundaries. And I was finally ready to set some. The real shift started a few days later when Emma called me. She rarely called unless she wanted something, so I was already skeptical. "Hey, Ree," she said cheerfully. "So Mom and Dad are thinking about having another family dinner this weekend. You should come." Why, I asked, "So I can be the entertainment again." She hesitated. No, it's not like that. They just want to talk things out, you know. Smooth over what happened." "Smooth over," I repeated. "So they want me to pretend I wasn't humiliated at my own graduation party." "Ryan." She sighed. "It wasn't that bad. You know how Dad is. He jokes to show love." "That's not love," I said flatly. "That's disrespect." There was a pause. "Look," she said, lowering her voice, "I get it. Okay? They've always been tough on you, but maybe if you just show them you're doing fine, they'll back off." That hit me harder than I expected. "So the solution is to prove my worth to them?" I asked quietly again. She didn't answer, and that told me everything I needed to know. I didn't go to that dinner, and that's when things got worse. My mom called me the next day furious. "You embarrassed us, Ryan. Everyone came expecting to see you." "I didn't ask for that dinner," I said calmly. "Well, you made us look bad," she snapped. "Do you realize how selfish that is?" That word again, selfish. It's funny how people who take everything from you will still find a way to call you selfish when you stop giving. By the next week, I was pretty much cut off. My parents stopped inviting me to family events. My brother stopped replying to texts. Even Emma grew distant, but that didn't mean they stopped talking about me. I started hearing from cousins. "Hey man, your mom says you've been going through something." Or, "Your dad told me you're having trouble keeping a job." It was classic manipulation. If they couldn't control me, they'd control the story about me. But then something unexpected happened. Aunt Laura, yes, the one who supposedly had nothing to hide, called me. Her voice was shaky. "Ryan," she said, "I need to ask you something. What did you see that night?" I hesitated. "I'm not sure what you mean. You told Mark you saw me leaving our neighbor's house. Did you—" I didn't answer right away. "Why," she sighed. "Because I did, but it wasn't what he thinks. I wasn't cheating. I was helping her with something personal, and he's using your comment as an excuse to make me look bad." That made me pause. "So he's blaming me?" "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "He's telling everyone you're spreading lies to get revenge for that party." And there it was, the spark. The same people who had made me the family joke were now trying to paint me as the villain. I could have let it go. I could have ignored it, moved on, tried to rebuild somewhere else. But the thing about being mocked your whole life is that eventually you learn exactly where everyone's pressure points are. I didn't tell her the truth that night. I just listened, nodded, and said I'd think about what to do. Then I hung up, opened my laptop, and started typing. If my family wanted to keep playing their little games, they were about to learn what happens when you underestimate the disappointment with a psychology degree. Because I'd spent my whole life analyzing people like them. Every insecurity, every pattern of behavior, every secret they thought no one noticed. And I knew exactly how to make those cracks widen. That night I made a list of everyone who had laughed at that banner. Every single one. And I started planning. The list sat on my desk for days. A wrinkled sheet of paper covered in names and notes. Each one a tiny reminder of the night I stopped belonging to my own family. I didn't know exactly what I wanted yet, but I knew I wanted them to feel it. The humiliation, the isolation, the sting of being the punchline. But revenge wasn't the only thing on my mind. I also wanted answers. Why did they treat me that way? Why did my parents, the people who were supposed to lift me up, take such joy in tearing me down? Before I could decide how to start, though, my family made the next move. It started on a Thursday morning when my boss, the director of the counseling center where I just started interning, called me into her office. "Ryan," she said, closing the door gently, "I received a concerning email about you." My stomach dropped. What kind of email? She turned her computer screen toward me. It was an anonymous message claiming that I was emotionally unstable and unfit to handle clients responsibly. It went on to say that I'd been asked to leave my family's home after violent outbursts and struggled with delusions. My mouth went dry. I could feel heat building in my face as I read it. None of that's true," I said finally, my voice shaking. "I know," she said calmly. "I told the board as much, but we still have to investigate. Until it's resolved, I'll have to limit your client contact limit." That meant I'd be doing admin work instead of what I actually loved, talking to people, helping them. It was humiliating, and worse, it was familiar. The same pattern again. Someone sabotaging me while pretending it was for my own good. I left work that day with one goal: find out who sent it. I didn't have to look far. That night, I called Emma. "Do you know anything about an email sent to my boss?" There was a pause long enough for me to know she did. Ryan, it was you, I said. No, she snapped. Not me. But Mom mentioned something about trying to get through to you. She said you were shutting everyone out and maybe needed help before you hurt yourself. I sat there in silence. My own mother, the same woman who had told me to grow thicker skin, was now spreading rumors that I was mentally unstable. She told people I was dangerous. I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I think she just exaggerated, Emma said quickly. She didn't mean harm. She ruined my job, I cut in. That's harm, Emma. There was another pause. Ryan, please don't make this worse. Mom's been under a lot of stress. I hung up. For the next few days, I couldn't eat or sleep. I kept replaying every moment of that night in my head. Her smile at the party, the way she laughed when they mocked me, the way she'd said, it's just a joke. It all made sense now. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a project, something she could fix or control. But the betrayal wasn't over yet. A week later, I got a text from my dad. We need to talk. Family meeting be at the house at 6 o'clock. I almost didn't go, but part of me wanted to see how far they'd go, how deep the knife would twist. When I walked into the living room, everyone was already there. Mom, Dad Luke, and Emma. Even Uncle Mark was sitting on the couch, his face unreadable. My mom started, Ryan, we're worried about you. I laughed, an actual laugh, this time sharp and bitter. Worried about me? You're the one spreading rumors that I'm crazy. Her face tightened. I didn't spread rumors. I told a few people I'm concerned for your well-being. That's what families do when someone's struggling. Struggling, I repeated. I was fine until you decided to turn my life into a pity campaign. Dad cut in. Watch your tone, son. No, I said, standing up. You don't get to call me son after what you did. Luke scoffed. You're being dramatic. Mom was trying to help. Help, I said, my voice cracking. By lying to my boss, by making me look like I'm unhinged. That's not help. That's sabotage. Mom's eyes were glossy now, the way they always got when she wanted to play victim. Ryan, I only did what any mother would do. You've been distant, angry. I've been disrespected, I snapped. You humiliated me in front of the whole family. And when I finally stood up for myself, you decided to ruin my career. Dad leaned forward, his voice low. You're out of line. No, I said again, feeling something inside me finally click into place. For the first time in my life, I'm in line. I'm seeing this family for what it is. Mark shifted uncomfortably. All right, maybe we should calm down. I turned to him. You should probably stay quiet, Mark. I wouldn't want your neighbor to overhear. His face went pale and the room went dead silent. Dad stood up, his jaw tight. That's enough. You come into my house, disrespect your mother, your uncle, your house, I said quietly. Right, it's yours. Everything's yours. The house, the stories, the control. Mom looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Ryan, what happened to you? What happened, I said, is that I stopped trying to make people love me by letting them hurt me. For a second, I thought she might actually understand, but then she said the one thing that broke something permanent inside me. You've always been the problem, Ryan. Even when you were a kid, you just can't handle a little tough love. That was it. The sentence that flipped a switch. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything, didn't storm out. I just looked at her and said, you'll regret saying that. Then I walked out the door. I thought that would be the end of it. I figured I'd just cut them off for good. But families like mine don't let you leave quietly. 2 days later, I got an email not from my boss this time, but from the counseling board itself. It said my internship was under review pending verification of mental health allegations. Attached was a document, a written statement from my mother, signed and dated. In it, she claimed I'd shown concerning behavior including fits of anger, paranoia, and a tendency toward delusional thinking. She even wrote that she feared for her safety. When I came over, I sat there staring at the words, my hands shaking. My own mother had signed her name to something that could destroy my future. And yet beneath the shock, something colder started to form. A quiet, precise kind of rage. Not the kind that lashes out, but the kind that plants. Because in trying to break me, they'd finally given me everything I needed. Proof, motive, and a reason to act. That night, I tore up the list on my desk and wrote a new one, not of people, but of moves. Step 1, collect evidence. Step 2, make them believe it's all falling apart naturally. Step 3, when the time comes, let them destroy themselves. And I already knew where to start. After I read that statement, my own mother's signature staring back at me like a final betrayal, I didn't cry. Not a single tear. I just sat there in silence for a long time, feeling something inside me go completely still. I think there's a moment when you realize you can't go back, that the version of you who used to forgive and explain and hope is gone for good. That's what happened to me that night. Ryan, the family punching bag, was dead. The next few weeks were a blur. I was suspended from my internship while the board verified the allegations. My supervisor was kind. She didn't believe my mom's letter, but procedure is procedure. My rent started piling up. I picked up shifts at a coffee shop near the university just to stay afloat. But every time I handed someone a latte, I felt that sting again. The humiliation, the disbelief that my own mother had sabotaged me like that. Worse, the rest of the family went quiet, dead quiet. It's strange how silence can feel louder than words. No calls, no texts, no apologies. They'd made their narrative. I was unstable, lashing out, cutting contact. It made them feel justified, like I was proving their point. For a while, I believed it too. I'd wake up in the middle of the night replaying that meeting at their house. My mom's voice saying I was the problem. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was broken. Maybe I'd spent so long analyzing everyone else that I couldn't see my own flaws. But then one night, I got a message from Emma, a single line. I didn't know she sent that letter. I'm sorry. I almost ignored it. But something in me softened just a little. I asked her to meet me, and we met at this small diner we used to go to as kids. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hands shaking slightly as she held her coffee. She said, "You were out of control," Emma whispered. "She told us you were yelling, breaking things, threatening her. She said you needed help. I just stared at her and you believed her." She looked down. I didn't want to, but she sounded scared. That hurt more than anything. She lied, Emma. She wanted to scare everyone into siding with her. That's what she does. Controls people with sympathy. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I know. I see it now. She's been calling me nonstop asking what you're saying about her. She's terrified you'll ruin her reputation. I let out a bitter laugh. Good. She should be. That meeting changed everything. It was the first time someone in my family anyone had seen through my mother's act, and it gave me something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. Over the next few weeks, I started to rebuild. Quietly, patiently, I moved out of my tiny apartment into a shared place closer to the city. My roommate Aaron was a fellow counselor in training. Calm, logical, the kind of person who listens more than he speaks. I told him bits and pieces about what happened, and he just said, "You can't change your family, man, but you can change the way they affect you." That stuck with me. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I focused on myself. I spent my mornings running by the river, listening to podcasts about resilience and psychology. I picked up extra shifts at the cafe, started saving money, even enrolled in an online course about trauma recovery. The irony wasn't lost on me. A guy accused of being unstable, learning how to help others heal. It took 3 months for the board to clear me. They concluded there was no evidence of the behavior described. I got reinstated immediately. My supervisor gave me a smile when she told me the news. "I'm glad you didn't give up," she said. "I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted them to think I'd vanished into failure." That was the beauty of it. The less they knew, the more control I had. Around that time, I started posting online under a pseudonym short essays about family dynamics, gaslighting narcissistic parents. I wrote about how love can disguise itself as mockery and how harmless jokes can turn into emotional control. I didn't name anyone, but people resonated with it. One post went semi-viral, and within weeks, I had a small following. People were sharing their stories with me. Siblings cut off, parents' guilt tripping them, whole families built on silence and shame. It felt validating. That's when I realized something. My mother had spent her life controlling people through her version of the story. But now I had something she couldn't touch, a voice that wasn't bound to her approval. I started freelancing as a mental health writer, then got hired part-time to help run workshops at the center. By the end of that year, I was doing well better than I ever had, actually. I'd gone from nearly losing everything to building something that mattered. And then one day, fate handed me an opportunity. Emma called again. She sounded nervous. "Ryan, I don't know if I should tell you this, but Mom's planning something big." "What do you mean she's organizing a family reunion in a few weeks?" "Says it's to make peace," but Emma hesitated. "I think she's trying to fix her image. She invited everyone, uncles, cousins, even people from church. I felt my jaw tighten, and she wants me there. She said she's going to extend an olive branch. But knowing her, it's more like a PR stunt." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining it. The same backyard, the same laughter, the same faces. Only this time I wasn't walking in as the joke. I decided I'd go not to forgive, not to fight, but to observe to see how deep her performance ran. And maybe if the opportunity presented itself to pull one string and let her web unravel in front of everyone. In the weeks leading up to the reunion, I prepared not in an obvious way. I wasn't plotting dramatic speeches or revenge reveals. My plan was slower, quieter. I gathered everything. Screenshots of her emails, the signed statement she'd sent, old text messages where she twisted my words. I compiled it all into a private folder neatly organized. Meanwhile, my life kept improving. The counseling center promoted me to a full-time position. My writing took off. I was invited to give a short talk about toxic family patterns at a local seminar. When I walked on stage and saw 100 faces looking back at me, listening to my words, I realized something beautiful. I'd taken the pain they gave me and turned it into power. But success doesn't stay hidden for long. One day, out of nowhere, I got a text from my dad. "Proud of you, son. Saw your article online." I stared at the screen for a long time. He'd found me. Then came another text. "Your mom wants to talk. She says she regrets everything." For a second, I almost laughed. Regrets or reputation damage control. Still, I agreed to meet her. Not out of forgiveness, but curiosity. We met at a cafe neutral ground. She looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was age or maybe it was guilt, but her confidence seemed chipped. "Ryan," she said softly, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I want to fix things between us. I just watched her waiting for the catch. I know I hurt you," she said, reaching across the table. "I just didn't know how to handle you. You were always so sensitive, and I thought if I toughened you up, you'd survive better in the world. I see now that I went too far. Her words might have worked on me once, but not anymore." "Mom," I said quietly, "you didn't toughen me up. You taught me to tolerate disrespect." She flinched slightly, but recovered with a trembling smile. "That's fair. I just want us to move forward, especially before the reunion." There it was, the real reason. "You mean before everyone sees through you," I said. Her smile froze. "Ryan, please don't ruin this for the family. Everyone's looking forward to it." I leaned back, studying her. "You know, it's funny. You always said family sticks together, but that only works when the glue isn't made of lies." Her face hardened. "I'm trying, Ryan." I nodded. "So am I." When I left that cafe, I didn't feel angry. I felt focused because now I understood something crucial. My mother wasn't just toxic. She was desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. And the reunion, that was the perfect stage. The day of the reunion felt like walking back into the past. Except this time I wasn't the same person who used to beg for their approval. I was no longer the quiet kid in the corner laughing at jokes that hurt. I was composed, deliberate, and armed with something my family never valued: patience. The house looked almost exactly as it had during that party. Same backyard, same folding tables covered in mismatched tablecloths, same grills sizzling under the afternoon sun. My mom was moving between guests with that practiced smile. She wore like a mask, her voice overly bright. "So glad you could make it." "Oh yes, we've missed everyone so much." I stood near the fence, half in the shade, watching her work the crowd. My dad was by the grill holding court with a group of uncles. He spotted me and waved like nothing had ever happened. "There he is, the man of the hour." I smiled thinly, didn't realize I was the theme again. He laughed, missing the edge in my voice. "No banners this time, I promise." I scanned the tables. My brother Luke was there, laughing with cousins. Emma gave me a small nod from across the yard. She knew what I was doing, or at least she suspected. We talked briefly the night before, and she'd said, "Just don't destroy them completely, okay?" I hadn't made any promises. The reunion wasn't huge, maybe 30 people, enough to form a crowd, enough to make gossip travel fast. My plan wasn't about yelling or exposing anyone in a dramatic explosion. It was about truth, slow, undeniable, and public. Halfway through the afternoon, my mom called for attention. "Everyone," she said, raising a glass, "I just want to say how grateful I am to have all of you here. Family is everything." People clapped. I felt my jaw tighten. She continued, "We've had some rough times lately, but what matters is forgiveness. We've all made mistakes." She glanced at me, then all gentle eyes and false humility. "But family sticks together, right?" There was polite laughter and murmurs of agreement. That's when I stepped forward. "Can I say something?" All eyes turned to me. My mom froze for a split second before recovering. "Of course, Ryan." I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. "You're right, Mom. Family should stick together. But sticking together means being honest, not pretending." There was a ripple of confusion. My dad frowned. "Ryan, let's not." I raised a hand. "I just want to share something. I've spent the past year working at a counseling center helping people rebuild their lives after trauma. And one thing I've learned is that sometimes the people who hurt you the most don't look like villains. They look like the ones hosting the reunion." The air shifted, instantly quiet, heavy, expectant. My mom forced a smile. "Honey, this isn't really the time." I pulled out my phone, my tone calm and measured. "Actually, it is because you always said I should stop living in the past." So I did. I stopped reliving the pain, and I started documenting it instead. I tapped the screen, projecting a folder of documents onto the TV behind me, the one they'd set up for a family slideshow. On the screen, her letter appeared, the one she'd sent to my internship board. Gasps filled the yard. My mom's face drained of color. "Ryan, what is this?" "It's your handwriting," I said evenly. "And your signature. You claimed I was unstable, that I'd hurt you, that I was dangerous." My dad looked between us, confused and furious. "What is this, Laura?" she stammered. I only did it to protect him. I thought," I interrupted gently. "You thought you'd control me by ruining me, classic tactic. It's in a lot of the case studies I teach," someone whispered. "She sent that to his job." I nodded. "Yes, and it cost me months of my life. But don't worry," I added, turning toward the guests. The board cleared me. Turns out truth holds up better than gossip. My mom reached for me, panic flashing in her eyes. "Ryan, please stop. You're humiliating me." I met her gaze. "You humiliated me first. I'm just returning the courtesy publicly so it's fair." Luke stood up suddenly. "This isn't right. You're making Mom look bad." I turned to him. "No, Luke. She made herself look bad. I'm just showing everyone the parts she didn't want them to see." Aunt Laura looked like she wanted to disappear. Uncle Mark was staring at the ground, knowing I could ruin him too if I wanted. I didn't even have to say anything. The fear in his eyes was enough. Then I took a breath and said, "But I'm not here to destroy anyone. I'm here to make something clear. I'm done being your family scapegoat. I'm done laughing at the jokes. I'm done letting your shame become my silence. No yelling, no theatrics, just truth. Clean, sharp, and final." I closed the folder and slipped my phone back into my pocket. The silence that followed was deafening. My mom whispered, "You don't understand how much you've just embarrassed me." I looked at her, calm and steady. "You don't understand how much you've already embarrassed yourself." And then I turned and walked away, not storming off this time, but walking like a man who'd already won. Behind me, voices broke out. Arguments, whispers, someone crying. My dad shouted, "Laura, what did you do?" Emma called my name, but I didn't stop. I didn't need to. The truth had done what I couldn't for years. It spoke louder than me. When I reached my car, I leaned against it for a moment, breathing in the cool evening air. The sun was setting, washing the yard in golden orange. It looked almost peaceful, like nothing had happened. But I knew that by tomorrow, half the family would be calling the other half, replaying every word, every look, every gasp. And my mom, the woman who built her identity on reputation, would finally know what it felt like to have it crumble in public. But revenge isn't just about destruction. It's about balance. And for the first time in my life, the scales felt even. Still, I wasn't done. Because what happened next in the days after that reunion would prove that even when the truth sets you free, some people can't handle what freedom looks like. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. No yelling, no frantic apologies, no desperate phone calls that night. Just silence, a cold, echoing silence that seemed to stretch across every room of that house long after I'd driven away. But by the next morning, the calls started coming. Not to me, though, to each other. Family group chats were exploding. Cousins who hadn't spoken in years were suddenly swapping theories, screenshots, and half-remembered stories. The cracks that had been invisible for decades were now wide open, and for the first time, everyone could see what had been festering underneath all that family pride. My phone stayed silent. I didn't need to say another word. The truth had already started working on its own. 3 days later, Emma showed up at my apartment. I barely recognized her at first. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "You need to know what's happening," she said, sitting down without asking. Apparently, after I left the reunion, everything collapsed within hours. My dad demanded to know if the letter was real. My mom tried to deny it until my uncle, the same one who'd laughed the loudest at my humiliation, confirmed he'd seen her typing it weeks earlier. That started an argument so bad that neighbors called the police for a domestic disturbance. No one was arrested, but the fight didn't stop there. The next day, my dad packed a bag and left. By the weekend, my mom's church group had heard about the letter too. Someone had recorded part of my speech on their phone. It was already making rounds in their small social circle. The woman who'd once boasted about her perfect family now couldn't show her face without whispers following her like shadows. "Ryan," Emma said quietly. "She's been calling me nonstop, crying, saying you ruined her life." I stared at the wall for a moment before answering. "No," I said. "She ruined her own life. I just stopped cleaning up the mess." Emma didn't argue. She just nodded, eyes glossy with something between guilt and relief. As the days turned into weeks, the fallout spread. My dad moved into an apartment downtown. I think he was embarrassed more than anything. Embarrassed that he defended her all those years. embarrassed that he'd raised someone he couldn't control. He tried to reach out once, sent me a text that just said, "You really hurt your mother." I didn't respond. Luke, on the other hand, took the silence personally. He called one night angry and slurring his words. "You think you're some kind of hero now? You humiliated all of us." "I didn't humiliate anyone," I said calmly. "I told the truth. You just don't like how it looks under daylight." "You're pathetic," he spat. "You think your little therapy job makes you better than us?" "No," I said, "it just makes me free." He hung up after that. But I could hear something in his voice. That same tremor I'd heard from my mom before when control slipped through her fingers. The family power structure they had built around shame and silence had collapsed, and none of them knew how to function without it. I thought that would be the end of it. A slow drift into distance. Maybe a few more angry texts before the quiet settled for good. But a month later, I got a letter in the mail handwritten from my mother. The envelope was neat, her handwriting as careful as ever. Inside was a single page that began with, "I don't expect forgiveness." She went on to say she didn't understand why she'd done what she did. That maybe she'd been jealous, maybe scared that I'd become something she never could. She said she'd always wanted to be seen as the strong one, the mother who kept everyone in line, but when I started standing on my own, she felt irrelevant. At the bottom, she wrote, "You took away my voice, but maybe it was never really mine." I read that line 5 times before folding the letter back up. I didn't reply. Some wounds don't need closure. They just need distance. The months that followed were strangely peaceful. I focused on work on my writing, on rebuilding a life that wasn't built around surviving people who claimed to love me. My essays gained traction online, and eventually I was invited to speak at a national conference about family toxicity and resilience. When I stood on that stage looking out at hundreds of people, I realized something that made me almost laugh. Everything they'd mocked me for, my soft degree, my sensitivity, my need to understand people, had become the thing that saved me. The same psychology they ridiculed had taught me how to see through them. After the talk, a woman came up to me and said, "You're so lucky. You got out." I smiled. "It wasn't luck," I said. "It was clarity." A few months later, I heard through Emma that my mom had started seeing a therapist. Apparently, it was court-ordered after she'd had a breakdown during one of her church meetings. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Luke stopped showing up to family events altogether. He'd become bitter, isolated, and I think deep down he knew he'd backed the wrong person for too long. My dad tried to reconcile with her once, but couldn't get past what she'd done. The house was sold soon after, the same one where every holiday had turned into a battlefield disguised as a dinner table. The perfect family image my mom had spent decades curating was gone. Not because I destroyed it, but because it was never real to begin with. It was a performance, and I just turned on the lights. Emma and I stayed in touch. She still struggled with guilt for not speaking up sooner, but I told her the truth. You can't save people who don't think they need saving. You can only walk away. And I had. A year later, I visited that old neighborhood again. Not for nostalgia, just curiosity. The house had a new coat of paint and a different car in the driveway. I parked across the street and watched for a while, the air warm and quiet. Kids were playing nearby, laughing. The kind of laughter that didn't sting. I realized in that moment that I wasn't angry anymore, not even bitter. What I felt was something closer to peace. Because the real revenge wasn't the public humiliation or the chaos that followed. The real revenge was living a life they couldn't touch, thriving in a peace they could never understand. Before leaving, I looked at that house one last time and said under my breath, "You made me stronger than you ever meant to." And for the first time in years, I actually believed it. I drove away with the windows down, the wind in my hair, no destination in mind, just forward. That was the last time I ever saw that house, or them. And honestly, that was the happiest I'd ever